Hello, algebra students. This is a part B on our lesson of factoring from section 8.5. We have a couple things that we need to remember before we get going. One of those is the zero product property. If you guys remember, the zero product property says that if you have A and you multiply it by B and their answer is zero, then either A must have been zero or B must have been zero. And we use that to solve problems like this. If we have x minus 5, that's the A, and x plus 1 is the b, and we multiply them together and we get 0, then either a must be 0 or b must be 0. So we ask ourselves, in order to solve this equation, what makes this a, x minus 5, 0? What would you plug into that x to make this parentheses 0, and you'd come up with the answer of 5, because 5 minus 5 is 0. And then we'd also have to do the same thing with this x. What value of x could we plug in there to make this parentheses 0, and we'd come up with the answer of negative 1. So that was one of the things I wanted to review. The other one was just how do we factor, which was in this lesson, the first part. Remember, we go to the last number and we say, hey, what multiplies to the last number? In this case, 5 is prime, so it's just 1 and 5. And then you have to ask yourself, well, how can I make these factors add to the middle term, which is negative 4? And if the 1 was positive and the 5 was negative, then positive 1 and negative 5 adds to negative 4, and also we can verify it multiplies to negative 5. So we could write it now like this. And what does that do for us? Well, we know how to solve this equation. We just did so here. So now we can solve these types of questions, which we've never been able to do before. It is actually kind of exciting. Let's take a look at some other examples. Right away, we have n squared is equal to 6n minus 8, something that before this topic we would have never been able to solve. Now, however, if we can set one side equal to 0, then we can solve this equation. And it's pretty easy to set this side on the right here equal to 0 if we subtract the 6n on both sides and add the 8 to both sides. Right? We really like our first term to be positive. That's why I'm not moving that one. But if I subtract 6n from both sides and add 8n from both sides, I end up here. Now, I haven't solved this equation. However, I can solve it if I factor it first. I can say, hey, what multiplies to positive 8? Well, 1 and 8 and 4 and 2 could. Well, which of these pairs could potentially get me to negative 6 and how? 1 and 8 will never add or subtract to negative 6, but if both 4 and 2 are negative, now they add to negative 6 and multiply to positive 8. So this would factor as n minus 4 and n minus 2, and that's equal to 0. From here, remember, we use that zero product property, which says if you have something and you multiply it by something else and you get 0, then one of them must be 0. Well, what makes the first parenthesis 0? That would be positive 4. And the second parenthesis 0, that would be positive 2, and those would be our answers. Pretty easy to verify. 4 was one of our answers. 4 squared is 16. If you plug in 4 there, we have to plug in 4 here. 24 minus 8 is also 16. We can try it with 2 as well. 2 squared is 4. And if you, was it 2? And if you plug in 2 here, 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 minus 8 is also 4. Let's go ahead and try these. We have two different examples. Let's make sure we know what we're doing. Pause it here, and then push play, and I'll go over it. So hopefully you got some answers here. This one is not set equal to 0. First, I need to add 6x and subtract 16 on both sides, which would give me x squared plus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to factor this. I'm going to look at what multiplies to the last number, looking for how I can find a pair of these numbers, 1, 16, 2, and 8, or 4 and 4, that could add to positive 6. And if the 8 was positive and the 2 was negative, it would do that. X minus 2, x plus 8. Answers then would be 2 and negative 8. This one is already in the proper form. One side is already set equal to 0, so I can just list the factors. Looking for something that adds to the middle term, which is positive 1, right? If there's no number there, it's positive 1. So if the 5 was positive and the 4 was negative, I would have x minus 4, x plus 5, right? These numbers multiply to negative 20 and add to positive 1. So my answers are 4 and negative 5. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'd love to go over this with you, and good luck.